Dr. Mari, is it true that most people with sexual addictions also have emotional and spiritual problems?
Yes, actually, it is true. In fact, what you'll find is that often those suffering from sexual addictions will have other psychological and family problems. In fact, psychologically, a person with a sexual addiction might even be suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder. So it's possible for two conditions to coexist. However, the kind of psychological problems that sex addicts often suffer from are associated usually with backgrounds of family conflict, neglect, abandonment, as well as abuse and addictions.
How might verbal abuse be linked to the onset of sexual addiction?
Well, if a child grows up perhaps in a family where there's a lot of verbal abuse because perhaps the parents are getting divorced and sometimes they displace their words on a child could actually grow up with a fear of failing in his future relationships and actually begin to cling to sexual behaviors that are inappropriate because of a certain need for security.
How can physical abuse or neglect contribute to the growth of sexual addiction?
Okay, well, perhaps we might take an example of a boy who's fondling his genitals, looking at himself in front of a mirror, and he's in his bedroom, and all of a sudden his father comes in, sees him, grabs him, throws him on the bed, and calls him, "You dirty boy, you pervert." This can actually be the beginning of a young man developing problems in self-worth, as well as difficulty handling his feelings appropriately because his father has neglected to teach him properly how to cope with them.
What about the role of sexual molestation or abuse in producing persons with sexual addiction?
Yes, believe it or not, 81% of those suffering from sexual addiction come from backgrounds of having been victims of sexual abuse. Even 80% of the wives of sexual addicts have been sexually abused. So there is really a correlation here.
What about the role of alcohol or substance abuse in the increasing numbers of sexually addicted persons?
Yes, actually, often what you'll find is that the sexual addict has a family background in which one or both parents were substance abusers.
What role does the media and modern culture play in encouraging sexual addiction?
Well, unfortunately today there is greater tolerance for not only twisted, perverse sexual behavior, but also for violence and profanity. In fact, you'll even note that today the average age for young men to become involved in pornography is age 11, and you could probably imagine the increase in sexual addiction with the widespread availability of pornography and also, for example, things like sexually explicit material on the internet. So it's a pretty grim picture.
Well, another disturbing phenomenon is the cycle of abuse. Could you please explain what this is?
Okay, the cycle of abuse refers to the phenomenon where a person who has been sexually abused then goes on to become a sexual offender of perhaps someone younger than him.
What causes the cycle to occur?
Well, actually, it could be that a person is flashing back to images of his own abuse and becoming sexually aroused by those incidents in his own past and then goes on to act out on it.
What's another way for a cycle of abuse to occur?
Well, a person may actually reenact his own psychological injury from his original abuse in dreams or actually physically acting it out, perhaps in an attempt to feel a sense of control that he lost, perhaps his lost sexual orientation, or perhaps even to gain insight into his own injury.
Could there be a more simple explanation for the cycle of abuse?
Yes, actually just simple learning and modeling the behavior of your offenders.
Dr. Mari, environmental influences can often be used to excuse a sexual addict's behavior. How responsible is the sex addict for his behavior?
Well, actually, it's true that problems with self-worth, with the management of memories, and also the culture at large can play a big role in contributing to the development of sexual addiction. However, a person's choices are his choices, and actually part of a new lifestyle developing for the sex addict, a healthy one, would be his willingness to take responsibility for his own behaviors and actually make a decision not to repeat them. And of course, even more importantly, not to blame others and to take those concrete steps to set his life on a new and healthy course.